It's time for Watts on Wealth Radio with Barry Watts and your host, Ralph Hipp.
Hey, what's in store for 2024? Some analysts say we ought to be preparing for the worst, while others have a more bullish outlook. We have a bull market going on right now. How do you get ready? That's what we talk about today, as we thank you for joining us for the Watts on Wealth program. And what you hear is what you get. You're going to hear Barry Watts offer some retirement planning ideas on our weekly radio visit and podcast. You can consider all this, probably use it personally. Barry's number around Springfield is 417-200-3500 as we welcome Barry back to the mic. And Barry, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. Thank you, Ralph. I was traveling this past week out to Vegas for a
kind of a seminar.
I had the most miserable travel experience possible, but I survived it. You know, it's definitely a first world problem, as they say. But sometimes it's really hard to find anybody who works for the airlines who really cares. And I found everyone who didn't care this time. So it was a hard trip, but we're back and it's good. And I'm not going to grumble much because I don't like hearing people grumble, first of all.
And did the door stay on the airplane when you were coming back?
Okay. So you see, you bring up a good point.
I got to throw that out there.
And they actually could reuse the airplane after they landed it here in Springfield. Finally. They could still reuse the airplane. So that's all positive. So it's kind of a good thing, I guess. Yeah. Hey, Ralph, I want to say a welcome to our friends throughout the Ozarks and those who are listening around the world through the syndicated podcast of Watts on Wealth. We're really glad that they are here. And so welcome to all of you. Ralph, this podcasting thing is really kind of taken off.
It really is. Yeah.
We've got clients from, coast to coast, Washington State, Oklahoma, Boston. I've got a guy who's a Harvard grad in Boston, and I kind of think it's funny that he's a Harvard grad and a lawyer from Boston, and he hired me, the State University grad, back in the Midwest to do his financial work for him. I just think that's humorous for some reason. I'm not
Very
sure.
good.
We got clients in New York. I'll even mention our loyal listener and faithful Buffalo Bills fan, Carl Mitri. Hello, Carl. He's out there, and I got to send him a picture this week of Mahomes riding a buffalo. I made sure and sent that to him before the ball game, and fortunately, it worked out all right for us because we won. So last week, I talked to a prospective client from Montgomery County, Maryland. That's one of the wealthiest counties in the country, right outside Washington, D.C. All of this from our headquarters here in Springfield, Missouri. And that guy in Montgomery County, you know why he reached out to us, Ralph?
How come?
Is because he wanted help reducing his income taxes, and he wasn't getting it from his tax person, the individual who was preparing his tax returns. So what I want to say is to our listeners, some of you aren't getting the help you need. I'm guessing it's a lot of you probably. And it's possible that the preparers who are working for you don't know how to help you. It's possible you don't even know that you need the help. And you just kind of want to go along and not worry about it. But I want you to understand there are taxes to be saved and there are commas in the number. The point being, I'm not talking about save $100 here, $100 there. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars. I think our biggest tax savings this year was like around $400,000. Now, I recognize that not everybody is paying that much tax, so obviously they can't save that much tax. But it's really fun when you can save $400,000. And so what we do, Ralph, let me just help people understand. What we do is we're holistic retirement planners, and that involves income taxes, and it involves income, making sure you have enough income for your lifetime. It involves investment and investment management, healthcare planning like Medicare and long-term care, estate and legacy planning. And the way we do it, Ralph, is it's all in one big chorus. Imagine the choir all synchronized with each other. We're coordinating. There you go. We're coordinating all the, by the way, don't quit your day job.
Okay.
We're coordinating all of these things together. And that's the magic of what we do at the Wealth Care Corporation. It's not three blind mice. You know, the accountant doesn't know what the investment guy is doing. Mm-hmm. The investment guy doesn't know what the estate planners are doing. We've got all those people here under one roof, and that's the magic of the Wealth Care Corporation. So I'm having fun. I love the show. I love the fact that it goes to podcast. I love the clients who come to us from that. And Ralph, I've got a little tip coming up. In about 2 months, people are going to be able to see my ugly mug and yours on KY3 because we're going to be starting a TV show.
We are.
Later in the spring, and I'm kind of excited about that too.
Oh, me too. On KY3, we'll sure let you know when that happens. And back closer to home, Barry, I'd like to give a shout out to Nixa. I had family in Nixa. We go to Springfield and Nixa all the time. And the families passed away or moved away, but gosh, I loved going down there, and I'm sure it's a different place right now. Nixa, Missouri, and a shout out to you if you're listening to us on our new radio home of Watts on Wealth. And Barry, you're helping people all over.
I didn't know that. Did you just have people living in Nixa, or do your people come from Nixa?
I'm originally from Florida and then moved to Springfield from Florida. Mm-hmm. And but Sheila's family was all there in Nixa, and we just love coming over there and visiting and going to Branson.
All right, so
and all
now
that
we're
stuff.
Just going to get personal here, because it's just you and me. It's not like there are a million people listening on the radio. So what was Sheila's maiden name?
Sheila Moore. Sheila Moore and Mike Moore and Alvina Mae Moore. Okay, and my mother-in-law, Alvina, was one of the most amazing people I'd ever met, and we'd love staying at her house in Nixa. So she's gone on to her heavenly reward, and we sure miss her and had good memories of Nixa. So I know, if we went to Nixa again, it'd be a totally different place. But gosh, love visiting down there.
Nixa has exploded.
I bet it has.
Wow.
Well, that whole thing from Springfield to Branson. So you've got a huge market to cover there, Barry.
Yeah, Nixa's a big city now.
Yeah. Barry, I think part of reading the tea leaves for you about what's coming up on the horizon for 2024, and depending on who you listen to, some economists say there is a threat of a recession still out there. We've got the election year going. Some are optimistic. With all these conflicting messages we see in the mainstream media, how do you talk to people from Springfield to Nixa to Branson all around the Ozarks about making some informed retirement wealth decisions?
Well, Ralph, it kind of frustrates me that the news, they say, so when you watch news, you're an old news guy.
Oh, yeah.
But
was on KSPR.
You didn't have those readers, what do they call that banner going across the bottom of the screen?
The ticker.
The news ticker.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't have the ticker saying, breaking news. There's a dog been found at the corner of Elm and Main Street, It's like, oh, come on. That's not breaking news. Stop it.
Now we just tuned in. Breaking news means nothing anymore.
Absolutely nothing. And so, breaking news, a recession might be coming. Oh, give me a break. Here's I got some breaking news for you, Ralph. A recession is coming. Now, I don't know when it's coming. I don't know whether it'll be this year or next year, but there will be one. It's a sure thing. In fact, about 1 year out of every 6, we have a recession hit. And you know what? I'm not afraid of that. It's just a thing to have to manage. It's kind of like a few weeks ago, we had all that bad ice and snow, and this spring we'll have some flooding. Yeah, it's going to happen. Breaking news, the James River is going to flood. I've been here 60 years. You know how many times it's flooded in 60 years? Over 60. This stuff happens. And it changes our pace for a brief time. A snowstorm slows everything down. But we're all alive and kicking, and all this breaking news shouldn't drive you in a nervous way. You need to take a much longer-term view. And I've got a story, if we have time for it, to tell you about taking a long-term view. So, Ralph, when I was in the 4th grade, I grew up in Galena. I went to the Galena school systems, and our elementary school was actually over at Abbesville. And shout out to anybody down in Stone County who knows where I'm talking about.
There you go.
When I was in the 4th grade, my dad took me out of school to go plow one day. And so Dad had a 3000 Ford tractor, and my grandpa had a 3000 Ford tractor, and Dad had a 3-bottom moldboard plow. Now, some people know what that means. Other people are like, I have no idea. It's okay. Hang with me. I had a 2-bottom plow. And so we were going to put in Sudan down on the Jennings place. That is where Billy Holt, Dr. Billy Holt from Nixa, by the way, that's where Billy Holt's farm is right now. I don't know Billy Holt, but I knew his grandpa, grew up with his grandpa, and went to church with his grandpa, who was a very famous and honored Korean War prisoner of war veteran here in our part of the world. His name was Bill Harris. So anyway, before that farm was sold to Bill Harris, Dr. Holt's grandpa, it was owned by my grandpa. And so we're going to put in Sudan, which is a forage crop to feed our cows. And you got to plow the whole thing up. So we're plowing, I don't know, maybe 40 acres. It took several days to plow it. So Dad took me out of school to go plow. Isn't that kind of funny? But that's the way we did it, in rural agrarian society.
Out of school.
Come on, we're going to go plow.
That's important.
I remember, of course, I was so excited because I'm getting to do man stuff, and I'm in the 4th grade. And so I remember Dad putting me on the plow, putting me on that tractor and explaining to me, now you're going to put it in this gear. And here's what he said to me. He said, once you get to plow on the ground, I don't want you to look at the plow. He said, what I want you to do is I want you to pick out a fence post over there on the far side of the field, the fence post or a tree. And I just want you to drive the tractor straight to that fence post or tree. And when you get there, the plow will be right behind you. And that is an analogy that I have used with my clients from time to time. Because if you listen to the breaking news ticker and get all jazzed up about it, it's just going to drive you nuts. Instead, you have to have a long-term view about this. And we believe a long-term view is age 100. That is our far fence post. Set your eyes on that fence post. Let's do all of our planning to make sure that we have income to age 100. And when we get there, our portfolio will be right behind us. Our checks will come on time like they're supposed to along the way. And so I'm trying to say, make long-term decisions. There's some adjustments you need to make, turn the wheel left or right sometimes because the market conditions have evolved. And you need to always keep those taxes in mind, but set your eye on the fence post and forget about the news ticker with news of recession. So Ralph, there's how we handle that kind of news when it comes down.
Especially in the Ozarks. Keep your eye on the fence post. Yeah. On the big picture, Barry, do you have something, and we're going to take a break in just a minute here, but can you give us a quick little piece of advice on how do we hang on to what we've saved for retirement when there is the threat of a major economic downturn?
Well, first of all, you don't just sit there and ride the markets up and down. People have been so conditioned to do that. When I tell them they don't have to, they're kind of shocked and they almost can't respond. You do not have to ride the markets up and down. That's not how we manage money at the WealthCare Corporation or our sister registered investment advisory firm, WealthCare Asset Management. So here's what you should have. You should have some money set aside that is not subject to stock market whims. And I'm talking, some people will have anywhere from 30 to 70% of their money set aside, not subject to stock market whims. And then the money that you do have subject to the stock market, you should invest it just like you pick a restaurant for lunch in a small Kansas farm town. And when we come back from our break, that's where we're going to pick up. We're going to talk about how you pick a restaurant for lunch and what that has to do with management.
That's right. And I've heard Barry give the answer before, and we'll give you the answer in just a minute here. You're listening to Barry Watts on Watts on Wealth. I'm your host, Ralph Hipp. Barry's number, by the way, right there in Springfield is 417-200-3500. More of the podcast and the broadcast coming up.
We all want the freedom to do the things that make us happy, especially in retirement. To get help planning for a future in retirement, give Barry a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. More Watts on Wealth coming up.
Imagine for a moment that an intense storm is pounding your house. Will your roof leak? Will the siding peel away? Will your basement flood? If your house is properly built and maintained, you'll be fine. But what about your 401k or your investments? The stock market has had a pretty good run the last few years, but is its current turmoil making you feel uneasy? Are you confident your portfolio is built to weather a financial storm? Now may be a great time to get a second opinion on your retirement plan. Call Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare at 417-200-3500 now. They'll examine your portfolio and show you if your investments are in need of some weatherproofing. Call Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare today at 417-200-3500 to get your no-obligation second opinion. Don't let your retirement get caught in the rain. Call 417-200-3500. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk.
You're listening to Watts on Wealth with Barry Watts of WealthCare. If you have questions about what you heard on the show today, you can give Barry and his team a call at 417-200-3500.
Welcome back in, along with J. Barry Watts of the WealthCare Corporation. This is Ralph Hipp, and the show is Watts on Wealth. Barry, we'd like to share that answer. How do you pick a restaurant in a Kansas farm town and know that's the place to go?
Well, Ralph, the reason that's an important question is because it has to do with how we manage money.
Yes.
And you might say, well, have I hooked you yet? Are you with me? I bet you are. So here's the deal. You've got a portion of your money, whatever percentage it is, that's set aside, not subject to stock market whims. So when the market goes down, you don't have to worry about it because the market didn't affect that portion of your money. But you've got another portion of your money that perhaps is subject to the stock market. And the way you manage that is like picking a restaurant at lunchtime in a small Kansas farm town. Now, let's pretend we're driving across Kansas, by the way. I remember doing that with my kids. When like the first Afghanistan war was going on, it was the middle of December or January. We were going skiing. And as we drove across there, we called it Afghanistan because what you
very
saw
clever.
What you saw on TV from the war and what you saw in western Kansas, they're both pretty barren, looked just about the same. So when you're driving across Kansas and you come to a little town, it's about time to eat lunch. How do you figure out where to go eat lunch? Well, you don't Yelp it. You don't look it up on any of those apps. What you do is you pull into town and you start looking at lunchtime to see where all the farm trucks are. Because where all the farmers are parked for lunch, and there'll probably be some police cars there too, that's a pretty good sign that that's a good place to have lunch, because what you're seeing demonstrated is demand. Demand. That's the restaurant that is in demand, and it's in demand because they have a good product. Now, what does that have to do with investing? Ralph, one of the wonderful things that we're able to do that we couldn't do 30 years ago when I first started in this business, 32 years ago now, is today we can measure the demand of any investment and compare it to the demand of another investment. We can compare the demand of the market overall and determine whether or not the market is in demand or the market is in supply. And we only want to be invested when the market is in demand. For example, all of 2022, you remember that's the year the market lost about 20%. We were totally out of the market then because the market was in supply. It wasn't in demand. And if you'll think about what demand does, when there's a lot of demand for something, it lifts the prices. And so we want to only invest in times when it's in demand. And in times when the market is in supply, we want to step aside for a time period. And by stepping aside when the market's in supply and prices are falling, we don't have to participate in that. So that's how we buffer ourselves against a volatile stock market. And I just call it picking a place to go to lunch in a Kansas farm town.
So we've got looking ahead at the fence post. Remember that, folks. Keep your eye on the fence post and keep your eye on the parking lot of the restaurant. You remember those two things from this show, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, here we are. It almost sounds like a hee-haw investment radio, doesn't it?
Just Ozarks common sense, Barry.
Well, it's who I am. It's who we are. We're in the Ozarks. Sometimes I'm in New York. By the way, I've spoken to the New York Investment Bankers Society, and that's a pretty hoity-toity bunch. We're talking the southern end of Manhattan, where the guy with the funny cap and the big long limousine opens the door and says, "This way, Mr. Watts." Yes. And I have spoken to that group. It's mostly filled with Jewish guys. At the end of my presentation, they were all standing along the back wall. This is the Jewish guys. They were shouting hallelujah. And I was talking
conversion there.
Well, it was just kind of humorous. I never would have dreamed going to talk about investments I'd have the Jewish guys shouting hallelujah in the back of the room, but they were.
There you go. Yeah.
And Ralph, I live with a lot of those people. I had one from San Diego tell me one time, "Barry, you just need to quit messing with those little small $10 and $20 million accounts. You need to tell them if they don't have $50 million, you won't meet with them." I'm like, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Do you know how many $50 million accounts there are in Southwest Missouri? Not many. There are a few, but not many.
There are a few? Okay.
There are a few here and there. But the point is, we have lots of mom and pops who have 500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million. Those are the kind of people that we're really able to help. And,
right.
I just grew up at Galena milking cows and picking rocks and building fence. And that's what I do. And I've got a farm today in Rogersville where we raise goats and cows and horses and chickens and ducks. And we pick rocks occasionally and build a little fence. It's not as much fun as it was when I was younger. But that's who I am. So that's how we approach helping people with their financial assets as well.
Right. If you have, would you say 250,000? They can talk 250 to 500,000, right in there for starters.
Let me explain where it starts, Ralph. It is that 250 mark, and here's why. If you got less than 250,000, there's just not a lot I can do my hands are kind of tied. I mean, there are some things we can do, but we can't really bring the full force of planning for you until you hit about $250,000. And from there on, we can really make a difference.
So for that, and it's 417-200-3500 is Barry's number. Write that down, 417-200-3500 when you're ready to talk to Barry. And in New York, they don't know what a fence post is, by the way. There aren't any up there, I don't believe. Hey, Barry, for those of us we're not expecting to retire in 2024, how do you make sure that they're ready if they're forced out of the workforce this year earlier than they expected to be forced out?
Well, it can happen. In fact, I just read an article and I actually intended to rip it off and bring it in the studio and I forgot to. But it was about
You need to go get it? Or?
Well, no, I'm not even sure where it is. I would have to study. But it was about the fact that most people don't retire at 67 or 70. What it said is most people retire at 62. And the reason that was happening was because a lot of them are being forced out by their employers. So, there's not a lot of loyalty these days, employers to employees, but it also flows the other way. There's not a lot of employee loyalty to the employers. And so it could be this loyalty problem. You got forced out. It might not be that. It could be an economic event. It could be a health event that sits you on the sidelines. But what I'm going to suggest is, in order to prepare for that you run an emergency drill. So here's a question to answer. If you got forced out tomorrow, how would you cover health insurance until you're old enough to go on Medicare, which is age 65? How would you cover your health insurance? Now you would do that, by the way, first using something called COBRA, which allows you to extend the insurance you have at the workplace, but that's gone in 18 months. And if you're not 65, you got to figure out how you're going to replace that. So that's a first question you should ask. And then the second thing you might ask running your emergency drill here is, how would you maintain your income if you weren't working because you were disabled? Well, there's a little neat tool called disability income insurance. And that's something that you should have if you're in the workplace and there's the chance that you could lose your job. So that's an emergency drill, income and health insurance. Now, here's something you should look at, Ralph. You should be sure you have 6 months worth of living expenses set aside in an emergency fund. And in order to know how much that would be, you have to know how much money you're going to spend every month or how much you're spending every month right now. So you have to drill into what that number is, multiply it by 6, and that's the amount of money you should have set aside at the bank in an emergency fund. Now, that way, if you do lose your job, well, you got 6 months worth of breathing space. You're not having to figure out how you're going to buy bread and milk next week. Now, here's another good idea. I think everyone should have a home equity line of credit in place on their home. A home equity line of credit. Some of you just want to change the channel right now because you're like, that's stupid. I paid off my house. I'm never going to put another loan on my house. Hey, dude, calm down. Take a slow breath. Mm-hmm. I didn't say to borrow money out of your house. I said have a home equity line of credit on your house so that if an emergency hit and you lost your job and you had no other place to get money, you could draw on your home equity line of credit. You had
that option. It's called a HELOC.
That's right.
You have that option.
And there you go. And so the whole point is you want to be able to access that capital if you had an emergency and you needed to. But if you wait until the emergency and you say, well, I've lost my job now, can I get a home equity line of credit? The bank says, nope. Why? Because you don't have a job. They don't have any hope of paying it off. So you need to put that in place. Right. Much earlier.
Right.
So those are just some things that I think are helpful. It's always a good idea, of course, to have your home paid off, or my preference mostly is to have enough money set aside in a non-IRA, non-retirement investment account so that any day you wanted to, you could just stroke a check and pay off your home. And that's a really cool position to be in. So how are you going to prepare for these unexpected things, maybe being forced out of the workforce? Those are some steps that might help you, Ralph.
Great. Once again, if you're going through this, and talk to Barry, it's 417-200-3500. Barry, what's your website over there, too, if they want to do some online research?
Just go to savingyouTaxes.com. Okay. SavingyouTaxes.com is the easiest way to get there.
What's your process when people actually come in to see you, Barry, to set up a comprehensive retirement plan that can manage the risks like our market volatility and these economic downturns? What's the process?
Well, Ralph, there is a process. We call it 6 Steps to Retirement Confidence because the problem is I'm approaching retirement. I'm at the age where I'm supposed to retire. Somebody's told me I'm supposed to at least. So, okay, I guess I'm going to do it. But I don't know how this is going to work for sure. And, it may be that psychologically it doesn't work, that you're not ready to retire psychologically, and that's perfectly okay. But we deal with the question of, are you ready to retire financially? Do you have your retirement house in order? And the 6-step process works just like this. First, we start with, do you have income that guarantees that you will have income all the way to age 100? And of course, that income's got to increase every year to deal with the rising cost of living, the rate of inflation. So do you have income to age 100? And if you don't have income to age 100, then we need to work on that. And that's one of the things we fix. And most people know how much income they'll have like the first year because they know what their Social Security check is. What about 20 years from now? Do you know what your income is going to be in 20 years? No, I don't know what it's going to be. Well, shouldn't we have that locked down? Because 20 years from now, you don't want to go back to work and have to say, would you like fries with that? You want to be able to stay retired. So can you retire and stay retired? That has to do with income to age 100. Secondly, we want to get you to the tax-free position if at all possible. About a third of our clients do not pay any income taxes in retirement, 0 income taxes. And so, the taxes are going to increase. There's no question in the future. If we can get you to the 0% tax bracket, which is not a function of, he didn't have much money, bless his heart. It's a function of properly structuring your accounts. You can make $1 million a year and be in the 0% tax bracket if you properly structure your accounts to get the income from the right places. And so we try to do that for people. And if we can't get them to 0%, we want to get them as low as possible. Then we move on to kind of what we've already talked about in that Kansas farm town illustration, this whole idea of principal protection and optimization. The third step in the process after income and taxes is principal protection and optimization. How do you get to the point where you've got a portion of your money that is protected and you get to decide what that portion needs to be, meaning that the stock market cannot touch it. And there needs to be a portion of your money in most cases that is actually growing with the markets, but how do you protect it? That's the pick a Kansas farm town restaurant. You're going to, at 65, have to deal with step number 4, which is Medicare. And somewhere on the other side of that will come long-term care. We help people navigate through those things. Long-term care itself is going to cost you about $100,000 a year or thereabouts.
Right.
And then beyond that, legacy planning. Legacy planning is not just estate planning. Estate planning is how you pass your assets on to the next generation. Legacy planning is how you pass on the things that money can't buy and death can't take away. Those closely held personal values, the things that are most important to you that you want to be sure your grandchildren and great-grandchildren have together. So those are the 5 steps, and there's really a 6-step process because once a year, we need to sit down together and go back through those 5 steps and say, well, do you still have the income you need? How are your taxes last year? Do we need to make any adjustments? How are your investments growing? Are they doing what they're supposed to? Do we need to protect some more of your money? Is your long-term care still in place? Do we need to shop for a new Medicare supplement because yours has gotten too expensive? Mm-hmm. Have you had an in-law become an outlaw and therefore you need to make some adjustments in your estate plan? Those are the kind of things that we deal with during periodic annual strategy visits.
Great. So you can plan yours with Barry Watts. The show is Watts on Wealth. Barry's number is 417-200-3500 all around the Ozarks. Time for our halftime break, Barry, and we'll have our Social Security question of the day. A lot more to talk about with Barry. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Watts on Wealth.
We all want the freedom to do the things that make us happy, especially in retirement. To get help planning for a future in retirement, give Barry a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. More Watts on Wealth coming up.
We're glad you were sticking around because you're sticking around for some good stuff here. Ralph Hipp along with J. Barry Watts, the main retirement wealth designer from the Wealth Care Corporation in the Ozarks. The number is 417-200-3500 as we continue our show now, Barry, with our Social Security question of the day. And Barry, here's a question from a listener who says, I'm an older parent and I've heard that I can get a Social Security check for my children who are still at home. Can you tell me more about that? So getting a check for your kids?
Yeah, your kids who are still at home. It's a great question. And it reminds me of a story. Today's story time here on Watts on Wealth. This is the story of a guy I know in Springfield. He was an insurance executive who had a second family late in life. When he was in his late 60s, about your age, Ralph.
Yes. By the way, I am very late 60s, Barry.
Well, he was a little younger, late 60s. I think he was 67, if I'm correct. But his much younger wife, we're talking 3 decades younger wife, got pregnant with triplets.
Oh, boy.
Can you imagine being in your 70s, waking up in the middle of the night to toddlers crying, screaming, and so forth? And can you imagine being in your 70s not carrying one diaper bag, but 3? Oh, my
boy.
freaking goodness. I just can't get my brain around that. Now, his kids were about my kids' age. So when we went to ball games and whatever, I would always see them. And he's the classic example of the kind of person who could get a Social Security check for his kids. Even though he was very financially successful, he probably didn't need the money. Nevertheless, when the government's writing checks and offers you one, I think you ought to take it. And so in his case, because he was over 70 years old, he was already taking his Social Security. How do I know that? Well, because surely he was. There's no reason ever to delay past age 70. You may not want to take it at 62 or 67, but once you hit 70, take it, because you don't get anything for waiting after age 70. And so in his case, he's in his 70s. And he's got 3 children who are in the house under the age of 18. So he can claim and get a Social Security check for each child, each of the 3 children, that is equal to half of his benefits. So think about that. If he's getting, let's just make it easy. If he's getting $1,000, then each of the 3 children could get $500. They would get $1,500. In that case, Social Security is paying $2,500 instead of just the $1,000. And of course, he was probably getting $3,000 instead. But my point is, when you're 70 years old and when you're taking Social Security, period, which probably wouldn't make sense to do until after 70 in that case. But if you've got a child at home less than 18, or even in some cases a grandchild that you have custody of, well, then they can get benefits from Social Security, and you ought to make that happen. If you want more information on this, just go to the Social Security website, that's socialsecurity.gov, and search for benefits for children. Benefits for children. And that's where you'll find more information about how that works.
Barry, I wanted to get into some classes here before we get to our topic of small business owners today. You regularly teach classes about retirement planning, don't you? And where are those and when are some coming up?
We do. We've got 2 different kinds of classes. One is a very intensive, about 5 hours. It's a course. We offer it over 2 different days, about 2.5 hours per session. It's called The New Rules of Retirement Planning. And that's going to be happening on Saturdays, March the 2nd and 9th, starting at 9 a.m. at Missouri State University. Saturdays, March the 2nd and 9th, starting at 9 a.m. over at Missouri State University. And we'll be happy to have people register for that particular course. I'll tell you how to do that in just a moment. There's also a more casual, light version of this course, much, much, much shorter, just kind of skim across the top of the topics. And that actually involves a meal. And those happen on a monthly basis. In fact, we had one just this last week. So you've kind of got a couple of different opportunities. To be invited to both of these and get a chance to register for either one of them, what you need to do is just send a simple text. You need to text the word class, CLASS, and you send that text to 417-882-1726, 417-882-1726, and then they'll be sure and get registration information out to you for the New Rules of Retirement Planning, the big intensive class that we teach over on the campus at Missouri State, or you can enroll in the light version and have a little meal while you learn some things. And we'd be happy to host people at either one of those. I'll be speaking always at the Missouri State event, and I speak at some of the light versions as well.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, he's talked to people in New York City. New York City, he has. And raise your hand if you remember when it was SMS.
Yeah.
How long
boy,
ago? How long
I've
ago
still got
was that?
SMS clothing, T-shirts.
Sure.
Like that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, those were pretty good days of SMS, and Missouri State's rocked the house and been awesome too. Hey, let's get to our next topic, Barry. And getting ready and saving to retire is a challenge for all of us, but for small business owners, they have some very unique concerns and unique challenges. And we want to spend some time on your show today talking about how you can get ready for retirement if you are not retiring from a corporate job with a 401k. You are a small business owner.
You know, Ralph, one of the things that I think is important to really think about, and this will insult some people, and I don't mean to, but, you know, it's important that you know the truth. And the truth is, some people are not really business owners. They're just self-employed. They don't have a business. They have a job. And the difference is you have a business if that business will pay you even when you don't show up. That's ownership, because owners get paid for owning a business that somebody else maybe is working in and running. Self-employed people get paid for working, and they're just working for themselves. So that's the first thing to consider. Do you have a business, or do you just have a job? Now, here's the alarming fact that comes from SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. And the alarming fact is this: 34% of what is called business owners, whichever category that you happen to fall into, do not have a retirement savings plan. 34% don't have any kind of retirement savings plan. How's that help working for you? You know, that's not going to get you where you're trying to go. 40% of these small business owners don't believe they'll be able to retire by age 65. So a lot of the people that you do business with and see every day and like and enjoy and appreciate, and they do good work for you, they don't have their house in order. And if you're one of those people who doesn't have his house in order or her house in order, well, fix it. You have to start. You just have to fix it. And coming to our class would be a great start for you, get you pointed in the right direction, at least connected to some people. And so if you'd like to do that, I'm going to tell you again, all you've got to do is send a text. You're going to text 417-882-1726. And in the text, you're just going to type the word class, CLASS, and we'll get you started on that process. But if you're working for yourself, you need to develop your own retirement plan, because nobody else cares whether you retire or not.
Yeah. And we also know, Barry, these small business owners that are really struggling with the fallout from the COVID pandemic, and all of them in all kinds of different ways. And as the pandemic was going, like there's a January 2022 report, this is from the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Business, says optimism among them is at an all-time low. We got more than 60% of small businesses forced to hike their prices to offset costs. You talked about prices and the demand may not be there for that. They're just trying to make a living and raise their costs for that. So a lot of these small business owners might be ready to call it quits with all the economic problems the pandemic handed them. And what are your thoughts when, like, I've priced myself out of the market? What do they do?
Well, bless their heart. I think this is a real big issue, probably everywhere, certainly in Springfield. And I'll tell you where I see it most obvious is in the restaurant marketplace. You know, Springfield's always been a place, all my friends from elsewhere are like, oh, I loved coming to Springfield. There are so many places to eat out. Well, not anymore, buddy.
Really? Yeah.
They're just closing right and left and here and there. And by the way, I think I know why they're closing. It's because when you go into them, there's not anybody there. They're empty. And you know why they're empty? Because when you look at the menu, the price is twice what it used to be. Oh my goodness. I used to go to lunch, Ralph, for $7 or $8. And now it is somewhere between $15 and $20. And we're just talking a sandwich and a Coke. So
Right.
I think that's a huge problem that has been handed to us in our culture right now. And I'm not sure how we get out on the other side of that, how that's all going to change, because once those prices go higher, they kind of tend to stay higher. But people are feeling a lot of pressure. And one of the reasons that they are pressured and may not even know it is because of taxes. Taxes are a huge issue for small business owners, and taxes are only going higher. And fortunately, taxes is where we have some specialization at the Wealth Care Corporation. So if you're making $100,000 at least, and you're a small business owner, we can help you reduce your income taxes. We've got some stories that are a lot of fun that are more than that. We had a client last year who made $900,000 and he's paying taxes on $900,000. We were able to create $800,000 in deductions for him.
All right.
So he only paid taxes on $100,000. That's pretty cool. I know another client who he made $2 million last year and he only paid $140,000 in taxes. Now, Ralph, that's about 7% if my quick Galena math is working for me.
Mm-hmm.
He only paid $140,000 in taxes on $2 million. And so those are some bigger examples. Remember what I said up front is if you're making at least $100,000, we can help you reduce your taxes. But even if you can't save hundreds of thousands, if you could save $5,000 in taxes, hey, it's $5,000. When's the last time your CPA ever said, hey, I got an idea to save you $5,000? That's what we do at the Wealth Care Corporation. And by the way, our CPA used to work for the IRS, so he understands the rules on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, and you do taxes. You do
Yeah,
taxes?
we
Yeah.
absolutely do
Yeah.
taxes
Yeah.
for clients of ours, and so Phil can help with that. So that's a little way that we help small business owners.
All right. Yeah, we're talking about the topic of small business owners on the Barry Watts Show. Watts on Wealth. WattsWealth.com is one of your websites. And what's the other one you mentioned earlier, Barry?
SavingYouTaxes.com. You can go to either of those. SavingYouTaxes.com has lots of things on it. WattsWealth.com is the website for the radio show, and you can go there and actually download a retirement strategy kit just by
Yes.
going to WattsWealth.com. And that'll be helpful to you as well.
That'll have more tools in your toolkit. Once again, Barry's phone number, it's 417-200-3500 as we get to the end of our hour with Barry. More of our conversation about small business owners when we come back.
We all want the freedom to do the things that make us happy, especially in retirement. To get help planning for a future in retirement, give Barry a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. More Watts on Wealth coming up.
According to the U.S. debt clock, in the time you hear this commercial, our nation's debt will go up by $1.5 million. That's more than $2 billion a day. Right now, our debt is over $31 trillion and climbing fast. The question is, how do we pay it off? One of the most likely answers is increasing taxes. Now think about your retirement accounts. Do you want to pay taxes on some of that money now when rates are historically low, or later when rates are potentially higher? Whether you should pay taxes now or in retirement depends on a lot of things. Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare know what to look for. Barry can help you create a plan so your retirement is as tax efficient as possible. Call 417-200-3500 to set up a tax strategy session with Barry Watts and the WealthCare team. That's 417-200-3500. When taxes go up, will you be ready? Call now, 417-200-3500.
Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
You're listening to Watts on Wealth with Barry Watts of WealthCare. If you have questions about what you heard on the show today, you can give Barry and his team a call at 417-200-3500.
One of the challenges for people who own or work for a small business, which we're talking about on the Watts on Wealth show today, is the lack of an employer-sponsored retirement account. When you have your own place, you probably don't have that. So let's get Barry back to the microphone, and Barry, talk about some of the options for retirement savings for people who do not work for that big boss, that big employer.
Well, you should have a retirement savings account regardless of who you work for. It's just your employer hands it to you if you're working for a big company, and you just punch a few buttons and you're good to go. And if you're working for yourself, you have to set it up for yourself. So there are some options for how that works. And let me talk to you about those options. So there are some accounts that are considered IRA-based accounts. They're different than your IRA. For example, one of them is called a SEP IRA or a SEP IRA, you sometimes hear people talk about. And the SEP, SEP, stands for self-employed person. So it's for a self-employed individual or who perhaps they're the only employee of the company, and they can put $69,000 a year away for themselves. Or I happen to know a veterinarian practice where there are 3 veterinarians and they don't have any employees, just the 3 of them who do all the work. Well, so they put $69,000 a year away for each of the employees, which is just the 3 of them. They own the practice. And so that's how a SEP IRA might work. There's also something called a simple IRA. Now, this is for any self-employed person who might have 100 employees or less. So if you've got lots of employees, a simple may be your approach. Why would you use a simple instead of a SEP? Because if you put in $69,000 for yourself in the SEP, you got to do the same thing for every one of your employees. And if you don't want to contribute an extra $70,000 per employee, then you need to simplify, use the simple IRA. And in that particular case, you can put in $16,000 per year. You can contribute up to that. Then if you're over 50, you can put in $3,500 to catch up. So that'd be $19,500 into a simple IRA. You do have to make some modest contributions there for your employees in a simple plan. I believe off the top of my head, that's either 2% or 3%. But that's how those IRA-based plans work. And then there's something else you can move up to, which is called a self-employed 401k. So for anyone who is self-employed and, again, doesn't have any employees, well, then this is a plan that they can set up for themselves. And they can contribute, in this case, $66,000 per year, plus an extra $7,500 if they're over age 50. So the total on this plan is $73,500. So these are just some different kind of plans that are available, but you should definitely put a plan in place for yourself if you are self-employed.
Barry, would you do a conference with a small business owner just to set things up for his business? It's not necessarily retirement planning, but just how to help out a small business guy in the Ozarks?
Well, it depends, Ralph. We only do that on days that end in Y.
Okay.
So, of course, we would. Think about what day ends in
which day is not in that list.
Wednesday, Thursday. That's what we do. So if you need help, call us. We're delighted to help you. That's our job. That's what we're here for. And Ralph, give them the phone number.
I will. It's 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500 to reach out to J. Barry Watts at the Wealth Care Corporation. What is the J for, Barry? Had I ever asked you that before?
Oh, you're digging a can of worms there. You're opening it up.
Is there another story in there?
My name is James Barry Watts.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, they called me Barry. I don't know. I need to ask that question. They called me Barry when I was a kid. Now, my dad's name was James.
Well,
and so I thought it was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
I grew up on the James River. Our farm was adjacent to the James River. And so I thought it was the coolest thing. I had a river named after me when I was a kid. And by the way, my middle name, Barry, I have a county, Barry County.
You do?
So I just thought everybody had their own river and their own county.
Yeah,
James
you would think.
Barry Watts. Now, here was the problem. I'd go to the doctor and they would call James Watts. I wouldn't respond. I don't know who that
That's
is.
Dad.
My name's Barry. And so that was a real problem. And I remember going through a stage in life as a late teenager, early adult, where I would put quotes around Barry and put parenthesis around James. And one day, about ready to graduate from college, it occurred to me, everybody who was sophisticated had an initial to start their name. And I became J. Barry Watts. And so it has been now for over 40 years.
That's the story. Well, call Barry and call him Barry when you call J. Barry Watts at the Wealth Care Corporation in Springfield. For all of us, the transition into retiring, it's really challenging. We'll go through some lifestyle changes when we leave our job behind and all the employer programs that go with that. Barry, how do you guide people around the Ozarks through the transition from saving for to living in retirement income mode?
Well, there's a couple of really important things here, Ralph. First of all, when you're ready to retire, it's not about what you're retiring from. I'm getting rid of the job. No. It's about what you're retiring to. What are you going to do in retirement? And I would say that you're not ready to retire until you can do it with a sense of confidence. Confidence that the timing is right, your psychology is right, what you're going to do with yourself is right, but also confidence that the money is right. And the only way that you can do that I know of is you have to go through the 6 steps to retirement confidence. You've got to be sure and get your income figured out so you'll know not only what it is this year and next year, but what it's going to be in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years, all the way to age 100. Remember, son, put your eye on the fence post, and when you get there, the plow will be behind you. Retirees need to do that. Put their eye on the fence post. And the fence post is age 100. You might as well deal with the taxes. Why would you pay unnecessary taxes? Well, I'm proud to pay taxes. I get a lot from my government. Well, I can be just as proud on a whole lot less money. So don't bring that BS to me. If you knew what the government was doing with your taxes, you would be apoplectic. There's a 15-cent word for you.
Barry, you're getting a little testy on this.
Yeah, well, I feel strongly about this.
Yeah.
Dadgum, don't do this to our people. This is no way to manage a country. So let's be tax-free if we can. Let's protect your principal. Let's get your long-term care program in order. And let's plan for how you're going to transition what death can't take away and money can't buy to subsequent generations of your family. Those are the first 5 of 6 steps in the 6 steps to retirement confidence. And the 6th step is we just monitor those every year and make sure you're on the right pace. So transitioning is about being sure you have those things in order. So when you take that step, you find that you're standing on solid retirement ground.
There you go. And Barry, when they own a small business, do we even call it retirement? What are some of the things business owners or anybody who retires ought to consider when it comes to their lifestyle in retirement? I mean, if you own a small business, you're just giving up your business. Is there any difference and other ways to plan for that?
Well, there could be, because your business could sell. your business could have
Well,
value.
yeah,
and
sure,
sell.
sure.
And people say, "Yeah, I'm going to sell my business." What do you got?
And-
Well, I
and
got the
retire.
truck out there. I'm going to sell the truck. I got 2 trucks. I got 3 guys on the road driving trucks. I'll sell them trucks, and tools are worth something. Oh, come on, sit down. Your trucks and tools aren't worth very much. You're not going to retire on trucks and tools. But what you could retire on if you're a business owner instead of a person who has a job working for themselves. If you're a business owner, you get paid for owning that business. It has value that another person would come in and want to take that business over. And so they will pay you to get to do that. So if you're young enough, if it's 2 years from retirement, it's pretty late to do this. But if you're 20 years from retirement, I think transitioning to be sure that you are really building a business instead of just having a job is really, really critically important, because your business then can be a part of your retirement income plan. And as mine is for me, part of what I'm going to retire on is not only what I've saved in money that's in accounts right now, but it's in the value of the Wealthcare Corporation and what we do. And so you have to learn to manage that stuff. And they don't teach this in business school. You won't learn this anywhere else other than sitting down with old guys like me who know how to do this stuff and who just begin kind of to make it happen for you. And so as you begin thinking about this transition into retirement, perhaps you're far enough out you can begin making that adjustment. And I would love it if you could. There's a book, Ralph. I've got to turn my head away from the microphone to read the book title here for just a moment. The title of the book is Sell Your Business for an Outrageous Amount. I love that title.
Good title.
Yeah.
And they go, how do I do that?
Well, this guy who wrote this book, he happens to be from he's from St. Louis. He lives in Clayton. He all he does is help people sell businesses, which we also do a little bit of that in our practice, because people come to us and want to know, what do I do next? And we kind of introduce them to the right people and take them down the road and say, here are things you're going to need to work on and so forth. But I just want to emphasize that if you're going to spend all these years working in that business, don't just have a job. Have a business that you own that has value as a business itself, whether you are working in it yourself.
Yeah. Barry, like in an NFL game with the Chiefs, we're down to the 2-minute warning on our show. This goes so fast for us. In our final minutes, what would you say about what goes into your work in creating a comprehensive retirement income strategy?
Well, the baseline is always starting with Social Security. Everybody's going to have a Social Security check, a couple of $1,000, maybe $3,000. The largest checks are now getting up in the range of $5,000 for people who have contributed the top amount for a number of years. So that's going to be the baseline for most folks. And if you have a husband and wife who both worked as professionals, and let's say they're getting $4,000 checks apiece, well, that goes a long way toward meeting their retirement income needs. And then all that they've saved up may be just for extra, for travel. I had a client in this week who sat down and they had just booked a Viking cruise from San Juan to Spain because the cruise company is repositioning the ship. And so these guys are going to go all the way across the Atlantic while the ship is repositioned. So it'd be fun to be able to spend money on that. And you can if you've got your baseline income in order. It starts with Social Security, and then we add to it your pension if you've got some. Now, after that, whatever money you're going to need to spend has to come from the investments you've saved up. Maybe those are in an account, or maybe it's in the value of your business that perhaps you can sell. And if you can, then that amount of corpus you have, that's the amount of principal total, some of that can be converted into a private pension. And we build private pension plans for the first 5 years.
Oh, great.
And we build another plan for years 5 to 10 and so forth.
Okay. Barry, that's a wrap on another great show. And once again, give them the phone number during this week if they'd like to call you guys.
Well, if you just want to call us here at the office, we're glad to take your call. The number's 417-230-3500. That's 417-230-3500. And we'll be glad to connect with you and provide you any kind of resource we can to help you begin taking steps toward retirement confidence.
6 steps in all, and get it started. Barry, thanks for another great show. We'll get together again next weekend and enjoy my time with you. I always enjoy hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Ralph.
All right, buddy. And join us again, same time, same station for the next edition of What's on Wealth. I'm Ralph Hipp. Have a super week.
Thank you for stopping by What's on Wealth. If you would like Barry and his team to help you make a plan to get to and through retirement, or would simply like a second opinion on your current plan, give us a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 200 3500. And join us again next week for What's on Wealth.
WealthCare Corporation provides tax strategy, tax compliance, accounting, and insurance services through its affiliate American Tax Strategies, LLC. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance never guarantees future results. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for information and entertainment purposes only and should not be used as the basis for personal financial decisions without first consulting a qualified advisor. The information and opinions you've heard are believed reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness.